Once there was a wonderful place which lay between the depths of the Mediterranean and the sands of the Sahara. It was a lush and green land, crowned with snow-capped mountains. Red deer ate grass in highland meadows, and cool, moist winds from the sea fanned the branches of mighty trees. This was the kingdom of the Barbaries, a land whose span from Egypt to Morocco fell under the watchful gaze of the largest lions on earth. At sunset, each male would raise his territorial cry. The male Barbary was an awesome sight. He weighed more than 500 pounds and could reach 10 feet from his ears to the tip of his tail. His mane was large, thick, and very dark, and ran along his chest clear to the belly. The female was a mighty huntress whose face was square and full of character. Their needs were simple, and the land was good to them. Generations of wild monarchs prospered and passed in turn. Down the span of endless centuries, the unhurried rhythms of birth, growth, death, and new life went on. It seemed it would last forever, but that was not to be. What the first Barbary to see a man thought about it, we shall never know. Was he curious? Afraid? Just what was this strange creature who walked upright on 2 legs? All too soon he would find out to his sorrow, for danger had entered the kingdom of the Barbaries. The land that was once their home is now barren and windswept. Empty fields stare back where forests used to thrive, and the kings no longer cry their challenge to the sunset. Only the mountains remain, and the golden age of the Barbary kingdom is but a distant memory. A new race of kings rules the land. They gather around their campfires and tell their children about the way things used to be when lions walked among them. And perhaps you can detect in their hushed reverence a note of respect and regret as they think about what might have been. This is the story of their passing. It is a sad tale, but as you shall see, not without hope. The first humans in the kingdom of the Barbaries clung to the river Nile for protection against the harshness of the desert. These Egyptians were the first to challenge the Barbary kings with spears and arrows, but the sanctuary of the Atlas Mountains was still the sovereign land of the lions for several centuries. 3,000 years ago, the Berbers came out of Europe to found villages across the mountains and eke out a living from small farms. Though they defended their homes against the lions, they were nothing like the threats to come. While the Berbers lived on in small villages, other men had grand visions of imperial might. The Assyrians and Persians built huge palaces and colossal statues of kings that they called living gods. The Egyptians turned their river valley into a field of monuments, the greatest of which are the mountains of stone that still excite awe and wonder to this day. These cultures were built on the iron will of absolute monarchs and controlled by the iron men of mighty armies. They valued courage above compassion, and they hunted lions to flaunt their courage to the world. Thousands of Barbary lions died under the spears of monarchs in their courts. Still, the depredations of these cultures was nothing compared to the darkness to come. Across the Mediterranean, a small tribe of Italic warriors was building their tiny enclave into an empire that would eventually hold 1/4 of the world's human population. Rome had conquered many kingdoms, and now they turned their eyes to the kingdom of the Barbaries. It was the Roman Empire that first reduced the Barbary to small numbers. Roman emperors sought to entertain the people and to reassure them that their civilization had control over nature. Individual lions could cost as much as 3 years' earning for a laborer. Emperor Trajan once staged gladiatorial games for 123 consecutive days, where 11,000 animals were killed. A lucky few of the mighty cats were trained to put on a show. They did tricks to amuse the public, but the vast majority of them were thrust from the total darkness into the blinding sunlight of the arena to perish on Roman steel. The popularity of these cruel spectacles was such that by the time they were outlawed, entire species were no longer found in their native habitat, all having been captured or driven away. 9,000 animals were reported to have died in the dedication of the Colosseum in 80 BC. 11,000 died in the celebration of Trajan's conquest of Dacia. That seems all the more incredible when you realize there are only 50,000 wild lions remaining in the entire world. Over 1 million creatures died violently before cheering crowds, but it was also the silent plague of habitat loss that helped destroy the kingdom of the Barbaries. As more trees became timber for the empire, and the cool glades retreated before the barren desert, the deer moved on, and the lions could no longer find prey. The Romans left many monuments. You can still see the Colosseum where death came suddenly, and you can see the empty plains where death came slowly. The Roman carnage ended after 6 centuries, but the Barbaries' troubles were not over. The Vandals and the Byzantine Empire briefly held sway over the land until the Arabs came in the 600s. As the Arab presence grew, the lions retreated. They were branded a nuisance, and a reward was offered for every lion destroyed. Farmers killed lions to get paid. This sad practice continued for many years until the great Barbary lion was rare across its entire range. By 1850 there were few lions left because firearms gave man a terrible advantage. Anyone who could pull a trigger could kill a lion. European hunters eyed these few remaining Barbaries for trophies. Like the Egyptians and the Assyrians before them, they sought to prove their manhood by shedding the blood of lions. Only the hard part was no longer the kill, but finding the victim. The mighty lords of North Africa had met an enemy they could not outfight or outwit, and the end of their reign was growing near. The kingdom of the Barbaries went unchallenged for millennia. It shrank through centuries of Roman persecution. It withered from Arab decimation. It retreated from European sportsmen. Under relentless persecution, it had gone from a mighty empire to isolated pockets, and then in 1922 to a single territory in the mountains of Morocco. A sport hunter shot reduced the kingdom of the Barbaries to a single blood-spattered patch of ground. As the last lion's lifeblood ebbed, even that small patch retreated. The last lion took in a deep breath, held it a moment, then let it out with a shudder. It was over. And yet, hidden away from the eyes of most people was the potential for its miraculous recovery. A new attitude would turn man from an enemy into a friend and breathe life back into the land of time-worn Berber campfire tales. We told you this story ended on a note of hope. You can be part of that hope. Throughout the 1800s, the Berbers had trapped Barbary lions alive and offered them in lieu of taxes to the Sultan of Morocco. Housed in the royal palaces in Marrakesh and Fez, the royal lions lived on long after their wild brothers had disappeared. In the 1980s, a hidden treasure was discovered in Ethiopia. 11 lions that had once belonged to the deposed Emperor Haile Selassie were languishing in a half-forgotten zoo. The males had the dark, full-length manes of Barbary kings, and the lionesses had the square faces of Barbary queens. Could these lions be holding genes that would allow reconstruction of the race? More possible Barbary lions surfaced in the King's collection at the Rabat Zoo of Morocco. There was a chance that some of them, perhaps all of them, might be pure Barbary. Only genetic tests from several animals would be enough to bring the Barbary officially back to life. Samples of fur and teeth have been taken from Barbary remains from around the world. What is being determined is the genetic markers that make Barbaries different from all other lions. Kay Hill, the founder of WildLink International, has a grand vision of rebirth for the kingdom of the Barbaries. Through the International Barbary Lion Project managed by WildLink, Kay is preparing to breed a new generation of Barbary lions to return to the wild. The Moroccan government has set aside 150 square miles safely away from the dangers of civilized development, where the ancient kings can once again issue their timeless challenge. Trees must be planted, and the Barbary red deer re-established, a modern cure for the damage done by the ancient Romans. It will take millions to make the site suitable, Kay said, but that is our long-term aim. Man has at last made peace with the Barbary, invading the old kingdom not to destroy, but to restore.